Alrighty, good morning, Jack. What's up, man? How we doing?
Doing good. Good morning.
Yeah, hope everybody's doing great. It is Christmas Eve, so we're recording this around 10:30-ish, 11 o'clock on the East Coast. So, man, I wanted to get your opinion on a couple of different things. So let's just kind of rip through it. But we'll start with last night with the Packers. Um, Feelings change on Green Bay throughout the year, right? Like you're waiting for which team's going to get hot right now. So I think everybody is locked in on the Packers. They're not going to sneak up on anybody. They dominated yesterday. Defense looks great. Christian Watson gets hurt, cost me my 4-0 potentially as he got hurt on and around. The Packers are really dynamic on offense. What was your main takeaway from not only the game but projecting Green Bay forward, because they are going to have to win three games on the road to get to the Super Bowl?
Yeah. I think they're firing right now. Again, their weapons besides Jacobs are like not really very name brand, I would say. So it's going to be a lot of Jordan Love making plays and a lot of guys stepping up. They have a good defense, which helps. But being away from Lambeau is very, very good when it comes to home field advantage. And so it's going to be tough for them to win 3 games in a row on the road.
Yeah, it'll be at Philly, at Detroit, at Minnesota. Combination of those three, maybe they get to start off with a Tampa, Atlanta, Los Angeles. No matter which one of these games, the NFC is going to be really hard to figure out. Are you going to favor whoever gets the 1 seed between the Lions and the Vikings coming out of the NFC, or you more so with the Eagles? How do you handicap the NFC right now?
I'm Team Lions. The Eagles, I really have not been high on. I'm still not high on. They absolutely blew that game against the Commanders. I'm not super high on the Eagles. I also don't think Sam Darnold can get it done. I trust Jared Goff a lot more than Sam Darnold. The Lions have better weapons than the Vikings, so I'm Team Lions here. I think they come out of the NFC.
The Lions get the Vikings at home the last week of the season. That'll determine the 1 seed. So you got the Lions. What about the Bucks, Falcons, Rams, Seahawks? One of those 4 teams. I guess the Rams would be the favorite out of those 4 to get rolling. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, I do. The Bucks would be my choice, but with all their injuries, can't really take him there. Although Baker has been playing out of his mind recently. But yeah, I like Stafford. I like the Rams. I think they're a scary team, and they're the team out of that group that nobody really wants to play.
Right. So the Rams had the inside track to get the NFC West, as I was saying yesterday. All right. So the AFC's still got some games up for grabs, especially handicapping the games this week. So I wanted to go through really the 4 main games in the AFC, the 2 tomorrow and then the 2 on Saturday. And get your thoughts. So first one's Chiefs -3 at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has the inside track for the AFC North. There's some different tiebreakers, but Pittsburgh wins the last 2. They'll most likely get it. How do you see it playing out? Chiefs only 3-point favorites. What are your thoughts on this game tomorrow?
I hate betting against Patrick Mahomes, but I feel like this is a spot that I would certainly consider it. I think the Steelers match up really well, especially with their defense and their pass rush. I would be very surprised if this is a blowout either way. I think this is a close game. It comes down to the final possession. I kind of like the Steelers in a game like that, and so that's probably where I'm leaning.
Interesting. Yeah, it'll be what both teams are coming off. I don't know who has the advantage here. Being on the road away from, I always make the joke, it's not necessarily in good taste, but most of these professional athletes prefer to be on the road during the holidays away from their significant others because then they have less complicated. Anyway, let me stop. What am I talking about? All right, Chiefs at Steelers. I like Kansas City. I don't know how to bet against Mahomes. I made the mistake of doing it with the Texans. Kind of felt like you probably feel now it's like a good spot to get them. Texans had them for a second, felt like in the second half, but Chiefs defense just, I don't know. They put the clamps on Houston when they need to. I just don't know if Pittsburgh will score enough points. We'll say 43.5 points is, kind of telling you it'll be a low scoring game. What about the Ravens and the Texans? That one's jumped up all the way to 5.5. Obviously you look at Baltimore, they're ready to peak right now, kind of in a similar position as Green Bay. Houston, I don't think anybody's any confidence in Houston anymore, right? Like they haven't won any big games. Now they lost Tank Dell. They already lost Diggs. How do you see both of these teams faring in this matchup and then down the stretch here in the playoffs?
I will be on the Ravens heavy, up to probably about a touchdown favorite. tomorrow. I'm very high on them. I think them versus Buffalo are kind of on a collision course here. Whether that's in that actual AFC Championship game or not, but that game is going to be absolutely ridiculous. So, and to kind of segue into that, I mean, those are your two realistic MVP contenders right now. And so those two teams are the two best teams in the AFC. I'm all in on Baltimore.
Really?
And yeah, I mean, I'm very high on them. I mean, Lamar is playing out of his mind, and when he plays well, the team plays well. Defense has stepped up. Humphreys had a pretty solid year. Yeah, I'm pretty high on Baltimore, and I think them and Buffalo are on a collision course into the AFC playoffs.
So before we get there, Houston just dead completely, just kind of the bad year for them.
Houston, if you're a wild card team, you want to play Houston because that is the easiest path into the second round. And it's not really close. Yeah. CJ Stroud has not had that great of a year. He's had very much a sophomore slump. I know that's been used over and over and over again.
Yes.
But it rings true still. I mean, he's making mistakes that he wasn't making last year. And their run game isn't quite where it was earlier in the season. And I mean, losing Diggs, Collins was banged up, Tank Dell's now hurt. Like their receiving core is really, really decimated. And they came in as a contender with all of these weapons, and now they just don't have them.
Offensive line got banged up even more against the Chiefs. So, all right. So you like the Ravens to roll. You like the Ravens. So you like the Ravens and the Bills significantly more than the Chiefs in the playoffs?
Yeah. The Chiefs have this voodoo magic vibe about them, and I don't think they have the talent, as crazy as it is to say, with a team with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. I don't think they have the talent around him to make it that far. And the voodoo magic runs out at some point. I mean, they've had so many of these ridiculous wins that should not have been wins. I saw a stat earlier this week or earlier end of last week that was every team, if you flip the outcome of a one-score game, and the Chiefs were like 3-9. So like if you had won by 3 to 7 points or less than 7 points, that turns into a loss. And then if you had lost by 7 points, that turns into a win. So basically like the parity of the games the teams are playing, and the Chiefs would have been dead last. They are not beating teams.
So you got, even if the game's in Arrowhead, they would have to lose the last two games in order to end up on the road in the playoffs. I hear you. It's a very compelling argument when you look at the numbers, but I feel like when you're watching the game, they always are ahead of the sticks. So for Buffalo or Baltimore to win that game in Arrowhead, it would have to be an A+ effort. Baltimore most likely will end up in Buffalo in the AFC Championship, which does give Kansas City a huge advantage because most likely their matchup in the divisional round would be an easier opponent. But there's still a lot to be figured out. You like the Ravens, you like the Steelers. Do you not, when you look at the MVP, since we'll go there for a second, is Allen just wasn't good. Not only was he not good with the eye test, just wasn't good numbers-wise. And now because he wasn't good with the eye test, you can dig more into the numbers this week. And Lamar really just has better numbers, no matter kind of how you slice it. You'll find a statistic here or there that can support Josh Allen. But if you're doing the numbers and Lamar hasn't won the MVP before, and you factor in the Ravens beat the Bills fairly easily early in the year, it would go to Lamar. That does come from the Baltimore, my perspective. But I feel like it is wide open now from a betting standpoint. It would make sense to bet Lamar right this second, just because he can have such a great game tomorrow, and that could put him over the top. Do you see it that way? What's your opinion?
I mean, yes, he has better numbers. They're very, very close, though. It's not like he's blowing him out of the water. Completion percentage might be like a 3 or 4% difference. But, I mean, Allen, you also have to think he was bound for regression. And from a fantasy football standpoint, Josh Allen had 95 fantasy points over the past 2 weeks prior to this week. He was on an absolute tear. So he was bound for some sort of regression at some point. You can't just put up 360, 2 TDs, and then run for 85 more yards and 3 touchdowns. Like that, you're bound for regression there. So, yes, he didn't look as good, but I feel like that's probably more due to his recent form more than anything. So, also, the Bills are currently a better team than the Ravens. So you have to factor that in as well. So
Yeah,
that's kind of the one statistic where you can't really compute it to one player. But I will say, I do think Josh Allen means more to the Bills than Lamar means to the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, that I feel like both teams are probably dysfunctional without him. they're or irrelevant is probably a nicer way of saying it. But to me, what's more interesting about both teams is that the defense picked up the offense. Usually when Lamar throws an interception or we get a fumble, I was saying it the other day, like just one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, and then the Ravens find a way to screw it up. So for us to get the pick six on the following possession, and then likewise for the Bills to have the worst offensive performance and the defense just flying around after that first, Buffalo.
Yeah, giving up 2 TDs to start the game isn't a great spot for the defense. But I do see what you're saying.
Yeah, they shut it down in the second half, and it was just play after play. It felt like they were flying around. So good sign for both of those teams. I do think that, I just feel like from the betting standpoint, Lamar has a tremendous amount of value. I would take it for sure. What do you think about these games on Saturday? Because when you get back to the playoffs, the AFC playoffs is either decided on Saturday and then we're done with it, or it does start to get interesting because if you fast forward to Sunday, the Colts have an easy game against the Giants, I believe, and the Dolphins are still alive. So as long as Saturday doesn't go chalk, then Sunday becomes interesting in the AFC playoffs. So start with the game, Chargers-Patriots. Chargers only 4-point favorites. They get the extra rest at New England. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, I mean, I like the Chargers, obviously. I do not like teams going to Gillette Stadium and going and playing up there in Boston, but I'm not really confident in Drake May. I think the Chargers roll here.
So Chargers win, they're in. It's the same thing with the Broncos. So they're 4-point favorites. I don't know. I'll think about that in the next day or two. I like New England. I think New England's playing. I would have liked them a lot more if they would have found a way to win that game against Buffalo. They're going to get another shot at Buffalo at home to finish the year. So I'm a little like maybe they lay the egg on this one and they get up for the next game. I'm not sure. But it is national television. Everybody's watching. Be tough for the Chargers to go up there and win. Hardball probably gets it done. What about your Broncos? 3.5-point underdogs at Cincinnati. Broncos really need to win this game because Kansas City, no matter what's gonna, even if they lose, Reed will do everything he can to knock the Broncos out in that hated rivalry in the last week of the year. So most likely the Broncos are going to have to win one of these two games, just because it's soft schedule for the Colts, and the Bengals would only have to then win at Pittsburgh. So I say all that to say that, well, the Broncos win this game. They cost me money on Thursday. I'm really pissed off. They should have won that game. That was terrible. How do you handicap this game going to Cincinnati?
Yeah, so weather, from what I've read, weather is going to be a factor. Like 15 to 25 mile an hour wind gusts, heavy rain. So this is going to be like a sludge fest. So be prepared for that. Love the under here, obviously, in games like this, especially with Nix being the QB for Denver and having a pretty stout defense. I think that matchup is pretty good for a low-scoring game, even with the season that Joe Burrow's having. I personally, bias included, I really like Denver just because I feel like our defense is going to be able to shut them down. And then it's going to turn into one of those games of who can out-tough the other team. And I like the Broncos in a game like that.
Why was Denver unable to finish that game against the Chargers? They looked so good in the first half.
Yeah, I just feel like it's inexperience. One of the youngest teams in the NFL, haven't really been in that position before where like, holy shit, we can clinch a playoff spot today. And so I think it probably got in their head a little bit. Herbert is a very legit quarterback. He's a stud, and like he understands the situation at all times. And so obviously like that played a factor. And we just kind of laid a goose egg there at the end of the game. So
McConkey's great too. Did you know he was going to be great coming from Georgia?
I had a feeling. I always kind of thought of him as a Hunter Renfrow 2.0, like a better version of Hunter Renfrow. Great route runner, quick, phenomenal hands, doesn't drop the ball, which McConkey's almost like the anti-Quentin Johnston, because Quentin Johnston has like some of the most athletic and some of the best intangibles of any receiver in the NFL. Can fly 6'4", jump out of the gym. He just can't hold on to the ball. And McConkey's almost the exact opposite. So very, very happy with how he's doing. And I kind of had a hunch that he would be just as good as he is as long as he was in the right system.
Chargers or Broncos or I guess Colts or Bengals, one of those teams have a better chance, Dolphins included, to make a run in the playoffs. Feels like it'd be the Chargers, or what do you think?
Yeah, probably the Chargers. Just from an experience standpoint, I would say. I would like to say that Denver, but I mean, I think Denver is kind of just going to be happy to be there. And then, I mean, you could always lope the Bengals in there because they have the talent to do it as long as the defense can figure it out.
Yeah. So there's a lot that can happen. I didn't want to go through all the games today. I know you got Family Day, but I did wanted to go through those 4 games, and then I wanted to get your take just on. I mean, it's terrible for the college football playoff. I didn't really look into the ratings. That was something that get dive into in the next year, just more about the ratings and just curious about different sports going against different things. But 4 terrible games this week or last weekend, right? With the college football bowl playoffs. Will it be different this week? How do you see these games playing out? Wanted to rip through them with you real quick. What's the I'm losing track what the first one is. I think the first one was Texas. Let me double check.
I want to say it's Texas.
It's 1 on New Year's Eve, and then they have 3 on New Year's. Like the schedule's I'm sorry, it's Penn State, Boise State's the first one. So let's do that in order. Put you on the spot here. It seems like way too many points. 11. SMU is like handing Penn State the ball. Is Boise State going to do the same? They're getting 11 points.
Yeah, I mean, Boise State's entire offense is Aston Genty. And I mean, people don't understand that teams ran a 7-8 man box against him every single play, and he still put up the stats that he did. So this is going to be a real prove it test for him and that O-line to see if they can stack up against a very, very dominant front seven for Penn State. So I personally like to think that this will be a closer game, but if Boise State cannot run the ball, this could be a blowout. Like 48-7 blowout. Yeah.
The game's in Arizona, so Boise State should have a nice crowd. I don't know. It feels like everything just went right for Penn State. Feels like that number's inflated. Arizona State's getting 14 against Texas. That's the first game on New Year's. It's that down in Atlanta. Peach Bowl. Arizona State, can they hang with Texas?
Again, like to think so. I like their chances better than Boise State's just because I don't think Texas is quite as legit as everyone seems to think that they are. I mean, you gotta realize Texas's only good wins are Texas A&M, who finished the season unranked, and Clemson, who lost to Georgia by 31 points, and who also doesn't really have a good win besides SMU, who also got blown out. So when you kind of stack it up, Texas doesn't exactly have a great resume. So from that point of view, I don't really know if they're going to actually be able to blow Arizona State out because Arizona State's firing all cylinders. They have a psychopath head coach, and they have one of the best running backs in the country. So I like them to keep it within that 14-point spread.
Ohio State's favored against Oregon. Are you surprised by that? It's a 2.5-point favorite. Ohio State's actually favored. Oregon beat them this year, and Oregon's undefeated, but Ohio State's favored.
No, doesn't surprise me, especially with Ohio State's recent form. And again, can't say this enough, hard to beat a team twice. So I kind of like that. I probably will ride Ohio State there. Ohio State is absolutely firing on all cylinders, and you don't know if there's going to be any soreness for Oregon or any toughness like getting going during the game because of them taking a break. I mean, they were off for almost a whole month, so we'll see about that.
Notre Dame, Georgia. Indiana's defensive line actually did a really good job against Notre Dame, besides the one long rush. So that, to me, tells me Georgia's defensive line is going to dominate Notre Dame's defensive line, and this one gets ugly. I know I'm setting you up to say that, but I think Georgia rolls them. They're only 1.5-point favorites. Probably a 5-point difference in the spread because of the quarterback. No Beck. We'll go with Stockton instead. But that just means Georgia's defense is going to play even better. So, Georgia's defense knows they can't give up any points. Feels like a really good spot for them. Sugar Bowl's in New Orleans. You'll have, if anything, it would be 50-50. Notre Dame travels, but probably more Georgia fans anyway. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, so, I mean, kind of similar situation to Texas. Notre Dame does not have a great resume either. I mean, obviously they had the win last week against Indiana, but again, that's not really a great win when you stack up and look at Indiana's strength of schedule and strength of victory. It's not nothing to write home about. I mean, Notre Dame has wins against USC, who was like 6-6 or 5-7 or something like that. I don't even know if they made a bowl, and if they did, they were 6-6. And then their other best win is against Texas A&M, again, with the wrong quarterback. Like, they weren't even starting the better QB in that game. And so, like, when you go look at Notre Dame, their strength of schedule and their strength of victory, which is the teams that they've beaten effectively, is nothing to write home about. And then you go look at Georgia, and Georgia has a ton of dominant wins. They have wins over Florida at the game in Jacksonville, wins over Tennessee, beat Texas twice, and Texas looks dominant to a degree. So
yeah, I don't know how good Notre Dame's defense is, because I thought Indiana had terrible play calling.
I agree. And I don't know if you saw, but Rourke's thumb was like the size of a grape. So like it was purple, and like he had a hand issue. I don't know if he was dealing with that coming in or not, but he very much could not throw. The other thing to consider here is the scheme that Georgia's going to run with Stockton versus Carson Beck is going to be completely different. And so there's no film really on Stockton except for 2.5 drives.
I'll tell you what the film is. I'll tell you what the game plan is. We have about, 7 running backs on that roster that are probably amazing, and we'll just get them in space, kind of like what the Packers were doing yesterday. Like, running the football is back in style. Just end arounds, pitches, just get the ball to the best players. Georgia's got a million great athletes. I just expect them to gash screens, draws, runs, all over the place.
No, yeah, but what I'm saying is Stockton has the same arm talent as Beck, but Stockton brings like a Diego Pavia type and a Haynes King type scheme to the game. And so I feel like they're going to implement some of those design QB runs like they did against Texas in that second half. And they're going to do some more RPOs and some more like read options for the QB. That's something that Notre Dame doesn't really know how to prepare for, because there's 5 or 6 different plays called that reflect that, because Beck could not run. Beck's only ability to run was when he was outside the pocket and there was nothing else to do. Gunnar Stockton's going to go out there and hunt contact.
Yeah, I think it's better for Georgia. That's what we're saying the same thing. So does anybody, you think, care about the NBA on Christmas tomorrow? Like, now that the Ravens and Texans are playing at 4:30, Steelers, Chiefs at 1:00. Is there any relevance to the NBA? I feel like the NBA is just losing relevance. I don't know.
I agree completely. Their scheduling has been terrible. Their marketing has been terrible. And like at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know if you saw the whole Joel Embiid thing yesterday. I mean, Drummond got kicked out 3 minutes later. Embiid flops on the ground, complains to the ref, and he gets the boot too. Like, their product just isn't that great right now, and they're not marketing it very well. And the fact that they're not really allowing, but kind of allowing the NFL to step on their toes and schedule games on Christmas Day is just a slap in the face. So I think the NBA is currently in a downward spiral right now in general, until the playoffs start, that is.
Well, the other thing is they made a decision to make it harder to make trades. Like, there's a lot of what's the right word? Obstacles to essentially making any trades to get into luxury tax this year. So the trade deadline and that kind of drama used to be more interesting. There won't be that many trades. Yeah, it's not really a great product at all. But yeah, tomorrow there's 5 NBA games. Like, I think there's been 5 NBA games now forever. Like, they've always had these games, noon, the 2:30, and it was at least casual viewing. I want to say must-see TV, but
it was a great thing to throw on while you're drinking a beer with the family or hanging out or playing a card game or whatever. However you celebrate your Christmas Day, right. It's a great thing to have on in the background and check the score every 5 minutes and be like, oh, Jokic has 38. That's cool. Kevin Durant just hit a 3-pointer to tie it with 2 minutes left or something like that. It's great casual viewing. That's a great way to look at it. Yes.
Yeah, I think we could do a longer pod on it, but with the limit, the ceiling to the appeal of girls basketball is the simple reality that they're not doing enough things that you can't imagine yourself doing, right? Like, the appeal to watching high-level sports is like, I could not do that. That's the appeal. So girls basketball, there's a ceiling to it. You have to really appreciate basketball because the athleticism is not something you've never seen before. In the NBA, that was the appeal. I don't understand how these guys are jumping through the air, at the speed that they're doing. It's incredible. That's not like the basketball that I play. Once you start shooting 3-pointers, you're like, oh, so that's kind of reminds me of me and my friends. Like this is just there. It's a ceiling to the entertainment of it because it's like that. It's just not that exciting. So unless you're a diehard, unless you're betting on it, there is a ceiling to it. And then frankly, from a girls basketball perspective, that's more fun to watch because then they're more fundamentally sound. So the high level men's basketball at the NBA, the best basketball is not great product. International basketball, like I watch a ton of basketball, and yeah, it's just the NBA, the league itself. It's weird. Basketball's the most popular sport. It's not even close, right? Like it just in this country, it's not even close. And yet the highest skilled players are like hard to watch right now. There'll be a million threes tomorrow. So anyway, have a did I forget anything we want to talk about? That's pretty much it, right?
No. Have a Merry Christmas to you and everyone watching here. Hope the holidays with your friends and family are great. And yeah.
Yeah, let's catch up. We'll do a pod next week after we get down to this will be down to 4 teams in the college football playoff after going into the final week of the regular season in the NFL. I know you didn't have too many bets last week. You were busy with work. So if you got anything for everybody this week, you'll float it out there. And then, yeah, sweet, man. Have a Merry Christmas. Appreciate you. I'll see you next week.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you.
Yeah, I'm going to do a pod in the morning. Talk a little bit more about about the Ravens game and Steelers Chiefs. And then, yeah. So, all right, Jack. See you, man.